Hi, my name is Caroline Barker and I'm a Legal Director at HCR Law. I'm joined by my colleague Laura Shelton, who's a partner, and we are both in the regulatory healthcare team. Between us, we have nearly 30 years of experience. Today, Laura and I are going to be discussing the importance of engaging a regulatory lawyer. So welcome, Laura. I think the first thing that I would certainly say is, of course, we have to remember that the health and social care sector is a regulated sector, and there is overarching legislation and subordinate legislation through regulations which providers have to comply with.
Yeah, and I think that hits the nail on the head, about why you would engage a regulatory lawyer. Quite often in the health and social care sector with the providers that we work with, the issues that they're dealing with, they can at first glance be seen as more operational issues rather than legal issues. But of course there is a legal framework to follow, whether that be from the Care Quality Commission, Ofsted, health and safety, and sort of more wider reaching things that we would also specialise in, inquests and really specific disputes with local authorities around contracts and funding, etc. It's always sort of been the climate in adult social care, particularly where finances are stretched. Sometimes a specialist lawyer might be seen as more of a nice to have, but in actual fact it can be a much more efficient and a more effective way to have things dealt with, because we can go to the heart of the issues without having to, cut through all the surrounding information that's not relevant. We know what the regulator will be interested in, we know what the powers are, but also, and I think this is really important, we know how your services work. Like, I know what a Waterloo score is. Yeah. We know all of the different terminology, but we also know that the pressures that providers are up against in terms of providing us with instructions at the same time as running services. We really do look to work hand in hand with providers to assist them and take some of the burden away if it's, negative enforcement action or whatever, as well as providing sort of strategic and operational advice to help forward objectives in the wider circumstances of the service that you operate.
And often there are very short deadlines involved with the sort of action that we see. As you say, being a helping hand and supporting providers to actually continue to do the day job, and us taking some of the pressure off them to do the responses to, say, enforcement action by the regulators. So it's really important that we actually look at it from a forensic point of view. We will go through the, say, a notice of proposal or an inspection report line by line, gathering the evidence. And it really helps to allow the providers to take a step back almost and feel that we are supporting them to prevent some action happening.
Yeah, and I think on the short deadlines point as well, engaging people that have done this multiple times, that know what to look for, know the questions to ask, and can provide a response in a timely and cost-effective way. But also engaging with a specialist service, you get the benefit of a team that has kept on top of all of the changes in relation to regulation. I want to say it's a recent change, but actually I feel like ever since I've been in health and social care, there's been some sort of change. It always seems to be a position of uncertainty for providers. The regulator's power hasn't changed. Public law principles about how you hold those regulators to account hasn't changed. It's just the way in which the regulator does it. But of course, if you are wanting to make creative arguments in public law about, irrationality, proportionality and all of that, you might be looking at the way in which the regulator is looking at things operationally or procedurally to make those types of arguments. I think that's the value that you get from a specialist lawyer.
But we also have other areas, don't we, that we help providers with, not just regulation, contract law. Of course, contracts are legal documents, legally binding, probably drafted by a solicitor to start with. We help providers when they want to increase their fees with local authorities. Perhaps the local authority hasn't been providing as much funding as they would like, or perhaps where there is actually some costs that are owed to a provider. You do quite a lot of inquest work. Would you say that arises out of legislation?
Yes, of course it does. The legal basis for inquests and the questions which the coroner will ask and the circumstances of a death, which in the care sector, of course, that's something that's going to come up time and time again. And also the sort of wider reaching implications that we're really aware of, things like prevention of future deaths report and the wider environment in which the care home operates, and that relates to media and how you manage all of that and relationships with stakeholders and associated civil claims and enforcement action. And of course we deal with the whole realm of that, and just going back on contracts as well, it's not just about fee disputes. We also help providers if there are embargoes put in place by local authorities or historic contractual documents where there's a bit of a dispute about how things should be interpreted. And that can relate to things around fee increases and, you know, whether or not state-imposed changes, such as changes to national insurance contributions, should actually be borne by the commissioner and rather than the provider. And I think that's something that's going to grow and grow. Why would you come to a specialist healthcare team in that regard? Well, you know, we know the underlying legislation around local authority funding, how it works. We have specialist knowledge of the things that feed into dependency assessments. We can also put you in touch with, you know, specialist witnesses if we need to work out what the actual cost of care should be when these arguments are being made. And again, it's something that we know goes to the heart of the issues without lots of research around it, because it's something that we deal with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of issues are interlinked, aren't they? We understand how one incident can actually lead to several types of action being taken or processes evolving that a provider can be involved in. So for example, where there's been a death in a care home, then other stakeholders could become interested. So for example, we might have a safeguarding alert through the local authority, which is based by the Care Act 2014. The police might get involved. As you say, it could be media interest, an inquest, regulatory inquest from the regulators such as CQC. And actually understanding how that event can have a knock-on impact is really important, because a provider is going to have to present a united front in terms of what they're saying to all of these people, but they have to be approached in slightly different ways. So actually having someone who can see not only the detail, but have an overview of what's going on and understand how the individual stakeholders interact with each other is really important too, I think.
Yeah, ultimately I think that's right. It's having that almost one-stop shop approach to deal with the issues that you've faced, and we can look at the different competing interests at play and how to manage that. I think just sort of generally speaking, what I would say is, you know, care in itself, health and social care, is inherently risky by the nature of what it is. It's heavily regulated. The consequences of falling foul of the regulations can be significant, you know, really significant, and therefore in those circumstances I think having a specialist regulatory lawyer just speaks for itself. In order to protect the interests of the business, you want to have people that can work alongside you and know all of the issues that you're facing.
And I think sometimes we always encourage providers to pick up the phone, give us a call, see if it's something that we're aware of, that we can help with, and perhaps give some guidance, at least in the first instance. Obviously we welcome people reaching out to us.